I'm Kate. I have the financial astrology business Profit with the Planets. I'm a professional financial astrologer. I've been doing this for about 10 to 12 years. And I also am a trader. I spent 5 years working in a trading education firm on Wall Street using technical analysis, market psychology, and trading skills. And I like to put the astrology together to help me kind of work out what I would like to trade and also some of the stories that might be coming to some of the assets that I'm interested in taking a trade in. I am my method of financial astrology. I'm not using it as a daily, up Tuesday, down Thursday. I'm preferring to look at longer term trends and stories because to me that's where the really big price event comes. And I'm not really someone that sits on my computer 24/7. I've sort of been there, done that, and I prefer to use astrology to help me just do the work for me, and I can sort of do what I want to do and go about my day. But really, the astrology is like a bit of confirmation bias and also a bit of a trade selector as well. There's a lot of stuff out there to trade, and it really helps if we have something that gives us a bit of a needle in a haystack. So I'm going to show you some of the methods I use. Should you be interested in taking any further study, I'm just about to release some sort of educational material. So this will really help anyone work out if this resonates to them. A lot of people like to trade with the moon. I don't do that. So I have quite a different method where I use eclipses and outer planets. So I sort of wanted to show you something in action and maybe something that's coming out this week. As I'm writing this, I'll show you just the date that we know it is now. Just so you can see, on the left it's the 21st of February 2022. As I'm recording this, I believe Ripple, XRP and the market have a decision coming with the Fed. So if we were using financial astrology, which is getting really, really popular, I want to show another way that we could perhaps look and to see if we can see an outcome if we'd want to take the trade. However, this is a company incorporation chart, so there is no financial advice provided and we can't actually use this on the markets. We need what's called a first trade chart, and there's quite a difference. This is more about the astrology of the company, looking more forwards. It is a little bit short-term coming in with the decision, but sort of how the company's faring to do with this Fed and the SEC. Because what goes on at the company will, at the end of the day, kind of show up in the markets later. And when we've got something like the Fed and the SEC, that is more of a direct result we could kind of see with the company. Now, there are several charts we can use that have incorporated several times, and this one I think works really well. So I'm just going to get rid of my face here and just get into the chart. When I ran this, I knew straight away this was the right chart, and that was because I have what is known as Pluto opposite the sun. The sun is the SEC Ripple itself in a chart, just like you are the sun in your own astrology chart. When we have Pluto's sun, we often have problems with anything to do with big money. Pluto in financial astrology can be the Fed, the SEC, large hedge funds, someone like Warren Buffett coming in, more probably by transit, but it represents all that really big money, particularly the Fed and the SEC. It could be China, for example, as an opponent in the chart of Bitcoin, but it's on that really, really big, powerful level. When it is opposite the sun, we often have a lot of problems. The early Tesla chart, the early, Tesla, it's the first chart before it went to the SEC, or Tesla, has a Pluto opposite sun and had a lot of problems with hedge funds in the beginning, always shorting the stock. It's another way of looking at this, but there's pretty much always a problem with money, Fed, depending on the story, this Pluto sun opposition. And what it's also doing is forming what's called a T-square if you're an astrologer, or this big sort of red triangle if you might see going between Uranus here, Pluto, and the sun. Now that's a really key feature of this chart and will always be coming into this chart throughout all the stories. So when one is, aspect that would set off this whole T-square. It's not to say it's forever going to be negative, but it really just sets up a lot of the problems and stuff we've seen. Uranus rules crypto, which is really interesting that it has formed into this what we call a pattern. And it also rules out of the blue news, shocks, change, instability, a bit of chaos. It can be really positive, but because it's connected to this Pluto opposition, it is bringing a lot of those Uranus themes, and it also rules crypto. So I did know straight away when I ran this is probably the right chart to use. Now, there are a few other things. We have what we call a grand trine between this Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune. However, we have what's called Saturn retrograde. We can't use house systems too much because we don't know the time it incorporated. Here it is in the financial house, sort of fits quite interestingly. We have what's called Neptune retrograde. I could make a whole video on that. Time does not allow that for people's attention spans. It can be a little bit like jumping in without really having a full idea. I do call it like kind of putting IKEA furniture together without wanting to read the instructions. It just can be a little bit of issues to do with money. So this Saturn Neptune connect here, and it's even connected up into this sun here, you know. So this is quite important too, but really for me, this Pluto sun Uranus is more important, but I certainly think a lot of the problems have really also come with this Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde connected up here. This is called Pars Fortuna as well, part of fortune, lot of fortune, but we probably won't get into that here. So when planets are retrograde, and here's our Pluto as well retrograde, they work a little weak, they're not very strong. Often IPO charts, this is actually an incorporation chart, so it's a little bit different about the company. Can take about 10 years to kind of get there. Some, not in all cases, but I do see a real slow kind of growth, a bit of a hindrance here. But, you know, they can get there eventually for sure, but there's certainly challenges that come along. And this sort of day-to-day financial challenges, 6 house rules day-to-day. We can't really use a house system. It's interesting, this is in the 10th house of business, money, and day-to-day. And then we've got this, you know, this is the one I want to focus on right now. So what we need to do is obviously, if we were looking at this and thinking, okay, what do we think might happen this week? I just want to make clear that we can't necessarily use this for results on the market. It's not about price, it's about the company and the stories with the company. So there is no financial advice provided here. It's just an astrological look for kind of what's up with Ripple, what's going on. So what we need to do, the first thing I can see straight away is that we are coming into what we call an eclipse series, and it's coming over in what we call Taurus and Scorpio. These are really big money themes. Taurus rules money, and Scorpio is kind of some of the, I can't really say it here, but it's, you know, it's sort of some of the heavy stuff that goes on. Not heavy, but, you know, just the, I don't know, it's a bit weird. Like a lot of stories we're probably going to see coming into these eclipses in Scorpio. To do with money, but more the back end of it. I think I'll just say that. So, you know, this is a really big series here. We have what's called Uranus conjunct the eclipse. So it's interesting they're talking about crypto regulation this week as well, while we've got Uranus conjunct this. Uranus is all about change. So it does rule crypto as well, but we can't say that this eclipse is purely about crypto, but it's certainly a lot of changes coming, and a lot of stuff on the market is going to get hit with this, particularly that has IPO'd within the last 1 to 2 years, because the Uranus in the charts are getting eclipsed. So we're going to see all sorts of stories coming over the next couple of months. But what's quite important is that this eclipse is coming right down over a placement in the chart. And I'd use eclipses as one of the main things I'm looking for. I would never do personally for me, I'd never do a financial astrology consultation or look with you know, what a company without this. And this eclipse is coming down on what we call the south node. The nodes are, just to put it easily, around the eclipses where it's the lunar nodes, and it's the eclipse series when this company incorporated, the eclipses that were around at the time. So we know those eclipses were actually in the Scorpio Taurus series back here in 2013. So this eclipse is actually for this company really related to the whole story of when they incorporated in the story of XRP and Ripple. So that's a little bit of weight here. Now, what I will say, eclipses to the nodes, it's a 10-degree eclipse. We have the lunar nodes at 15. We also have Pluto here at 10 degrees. So whenever we have a planet at the degree of the eclipse, that really comes into account, you know, in anything that we're looking at, and also our lives and stuff like that. Now we have the sun at 9 degrees, 1 degree away, and we can allow a degree on either side, but especially when we've got something like this Pluto, Pluto ruling all that stuff I talked about, the Fed and the SEC. So we know this is quite an important eclipse. So we want to look at how the eclipse is aspecting. Now the eclipse is squaring Venus here. Just put a little thing here. The Venus rules currencies. It's up here. So that's quite interesting, being that crypto is a currency. And we've got the eclipse. Look, it is sextiling the sun trine Pluto. So it looks positive up there, but we've got to keep remembering that this whole setup, to do with this sort of big T-square, or, this sort of big triangle, is that means it's going to get hit with this eclipse. It's 2 degrees off here, but it will certainly activate it, which is pretty important here. And it's coming over the nodes. Now, from my experience, it's a little, sometimes it can be very bearish when we've got an eclipse to the nodes. If you want to get in that more, the story, it's connected to the company when they set up and stuff like that. So often we see quite negative prices on the markets. This is not a market chart, just stressing that. It's more to do with the story of the company. And we've got Uranus over here. I'll get into that in a second. But what's really important here, it's opposite this Saturn. So it's that pattern is setting off here with this sort of Neptune, Saturn, Sun here. So we've got 2 big patterns on this chart setting off. Now, eclipses opposite the sun, they're not that great either. They're not quite as bad as the one coming that goes what we call conjunct. This is called conjunct when it's on top of. I'm going to say on top of for the sake of education here. But it is opposite. So we do have 2 kind of slightly bearish events set up here. We have the set off of this, what we call this T-square, but we have a positive aspect here. So the way I would lean to this is either a bearish to mixed reaction. I mean, as I said, this Pluto Sun is really important. It is positive here. For me, I probably would just, no financial advice, but when I get a mixed result, I just kind of move on to something else, because we want a really, really clear, story, or what we think would be the outcome, or the astrological answer here. So when we've got, it could be something sort of a bit unexpected, or, but it's double bearish mixed with this kind of really important part in the chart. What I will say is, I don't think the story is finished here personally, and that is because there's going to be a second eclipse coming in October 2022. Now, that eclipse is going to conjunct the Saturn. That's pretty important. It's generally, we do tend to see a price event on the market, but remember, this is the company, so I feel like there's another story connected to this. Generally, we do tend to see some kind of news when we've got an eclipse to Saturn. Is it always fantastic? Most of the time not. We do have Jupiter 1 degree away of that eclipse. Again, it's squaring the Venus. It is going to trine the Jupiter. But yeah, we just got to take into account that's coming. So my thoughts on this. Look, I don't trade crypto. I'm just going to put it out there. This is a really neutral astrology look at this stuff. Sometimes it really helps to not be emotionally or financially invested when we look at stuff. It's very, very hard when we've got an investment not to, have some sort of attachment to it. Venus will conjunct this eclipse. So generally as the eclipse itself, it could be a lot friendlier, but it is coming over the Saturn here. So my thoughts are, and even the Saturn is the same degree of this Venus here. Again, that's getting squared here. So I feel like the story is not quite finished there. Here, I should say. I think there's a little bit more to come. Now, also what's going on here is that you have Uranus coming over, and it's going to be, what we call, on top of or conjunct these lunar nodes connected to the, when the company founded. It's a bit of a job Uranus does in financial astrology. I'm not going to get into it too much here, but you certainly need to know how this works if you want to use, how Uranus works if you want to use financial astrology to trade, because it is going to bring you most of the stories and answers along with the eclipses. And what it's doing, it's coming what we call stationing retrograde, or stationing back and forth all the way until February 2023. What it's doing is creating a big story to do with this company. Now, why I'm sort of really also pointing that out is that we have what we call a Jupiter conjunct Uranus, or I can't really call it, on top of Jupiter's coming on top of Uranus. And that's actually coming along around, this is a little bit in advance, but we do need to plan astrology out well for 6 months. You need a 6-month plan. You can short-term trade it, but it really helps to look at the full picture. Now, what you're going to have coming here, and this looks a lot more positive, is that you're going to have Jupiter conjunct Uranus, Jupiter Venus conjunct Uranus here. This is not financial advice, this is to do with the company. And this, again, it will set off this whole pattern here. So something to do with the Fed, the SEC, and the company, crypto, the lark of the company, 2023. Now you can see here is the Uranus over these nodes again. And this is looking a whole lot better. So my thoughts are that this probably hasn't finished here. I mean, obviously there's a short-term trade event. It's really mixed to me. I probably would lean a little bit. Again, it's more about the story on the company. I feel like this, maybe the SEC lays off them a little bit, but you know, something's not quite fully finished there. Look, I don't know because I don't know the story that much. But whatever happens, when the eclipse comes back down over this Saturn here, which as I said, it's pretty rare that we have an eclipse to Saturn in October 2022, could come anywhere from September. If there was to be, you know, some news that came out negatively about the company, it would certainly set up for something coming of a more positive nature into early 2023. Now, eclipses take center stage, particularly the one in October, but we also want to look at some of the transits going on as well to give us a bit of a story. We have just finished a Jupiter sextile Pluto, which is actually really positive. However, that has finished. So we've got to kind of look here right now. Again, the eclipses, you cannot use transits though on a chart when you have an eclipse hitting within 6 weeks, because the eclipse is going to take priority. You'd certainly want to look at some of these outer planets, what's going on. It's a bit mixed because our good transits have actually finished. And we need them to be kind of what we call applying or coming in to give us the sort of the better news when they're finished. It may have helped though something in the back end of what the SEC has been working on. I don't know. We have this Pluto square moon, how the public are feeling a really, really mixed reaction. But when I was going through this, I noticed some pretty big transits coming up. Again, why I don't think the story's finished. This is June 2022, Jupiter square Pluto, Jupiter square the Sun. Now that's going to come in a lot closer, coming in around July. It's not going to quite get there. It's called what's coming in partile. So, and we have this Pluto square moon again. We might not feel that too much, but it is not the greatest transit when it comes to financial assets. So I'm just putting it out there. Look, we have this sort of Venus moon conjunct Sun, but that's really kind of light stuff. And we think that, and look, this other eclipse, I would not be surprised if there's some more news coming later. So we just want to put that out there as a bigger kind of story and look at what's going on, you know, with the kind of chart and stuff like that. So for right now, we have had some really good transits because we've had Jupiter trine and sextile the Sun. Now it's interesting that traders are taking really big bets here, right, as these really big positive Jupiter sextile Jupiter Sun Pluto. Pretty important in financial astrology, and we've even had Uranus trine Pluto. So here come all these traders coming in, taking these bets. You know, I think it's a huge positions that's come in. So I'm really not surprised that, you know, people have come in anticipation and bought this stuff, because that's certainly not a negative setup there, but the eclipse tells the story. So whether that kind of translates into the actual, you know, the outcome, just because traders have bought it, I'm not so sure, because that astrology is finished. But that's not to say, again, we have that mixed result coming over the Pluto and Jupiter. So it, you know, when we really want a really, really clear result, and particularly on what we call a first trade chart. So that is a little bit of the story here. Again, I think 2023 will provide quite a different outcome to this company. And, you know, particularly because this pattern's going to set off, this is the company itself, you probably might see things getting a little better into next year as far as some of the headlines that come out. So that is a little bit of looking at the astrology of Ripple, the company based on the incorporation chart. I hope you got something out of that, and like and subscribe. There'll be some more videos coming, and look for educational content if you would like to learn financial astrology more via a kind of different method than what's going on quite a lot over social media. And thanks for watching.